preparing to stream, and according to Zoom, we're live. All right, awesome. Well, we're a little early. I put it out that we were going to go live at
Look at
11:30. Say what, Lisa?
Look at the time.
Oh, 11:17. Interest in that. Okay, let me say hello in the chat to make sure that it is operational. And if you guys are joining us, well, there's, according to my calculations, nobody quite yet. Again,
Nobody.
Well, nobody and everybody. Right? Nobody and everybody all at the same time.
There you go.
No bodies, anyways, but
say what?
No bodies yet, but could be.
There we go. Yeah. So, well, I said I called this GalPal Posse Catchup because the truth of it is, while the three of us have met privately a time or two, we actually haven't until last night for quite some time, because you too were on the scratch off list the last 2 weeks when I couldn't hold my head up from the trip I was on. So, thank you for your understanding in regards to that, BZ, because everybody got the call that said, sorry, can't hang tonight. Sorry guys. So I'm so glad that we get a chance to catch up with you, BZ. I know you've been a bit busy too, hey?
Yep, been busy with, actually mostly busy with real work stuff. and not
spring.
And not linear work stuff. I've been busy with that too, but
yeah, but I'm really excited for you that you've been able, because you really have been doing a lot of your own. You've had the opportunity to present itself for you to be able to do a lot of your own inner work as well. And you've shared some of what you're experiencing with. And we'll have to do a show all about that whenever you're ready. I would love to have you share some of your experiences with that, whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this last night, and I don't know however you want to bring that back up for us, so we could sort of take off where you actually said, hey, this is our topic for tomorrow, because it really does kind of fit in with a lot of different stuff.
Right. Well, we were talking about, I think part of what prompted around to the question is you asked me, is it true about the price of silver? And so we went into a bit of discussion about that. And with going into a discussion about that, it presented itself as a great metaphor, because I was in that discussion, I was talking about the new thing with the Australian, the Perth Mint, and they were going to now do this new thing where they were going to pool doing a pooling of things and making 1,000.
Yeah, I didn't look that term up, but I really want to. So, and I see that Kevin Westring is in the house. So I bet Kevin might know about what you're about to talk about. In regards to, because when one thinks of pooling one's assets, right? That's a collecting of all manner of different kinds of things into a pool. Well, you've referred to things as a cookie bowl before, putting all your ingredients in, right? So pooling is sort of like that, isn't that right?
Yeah, pooling your assets and
but in terms of this minting thing with the Perth Mint.
Well, that's the phrase that they came up with, is that they were pooling it into 1,000-ounce silver bars to make it more efficient, effective, easily deliverable to all the people who are calling in their paper silver. And I saw that and I burst out laughing. And I thought, okay, well, there's discernment that needs to be happening right there, because if you pull it and you put it into a bar, then you look at the bar and you say, oh, nice 1,000-ounce silver bar.
Yeah.
Except I had this whole video come in of they were pooling all right, and in the foundries they were adding all sorts of stuff in there, and just the outside was the silver. But what that so then we were talking about the coins and stuff, and so somewhere along the line, very quickly, and then it came to just I said, it's just like everybody is always reaching back to what it was. And you were going, I said, well, I think you said, I think people are doing that because that's where their frame of reference is or whatever. And I said, yes, a very good example of that is we're going back to the original divine template. And I said, when we think of that, many people think, well, we're going to go back to that. We're going to scrape off all of the stuff that's come after that, and then we're just going to go from there. And I said, well, since we're on silver and minting something, we had our first pressing of the coin in the original divine template, and then all the other stuff came in between, and now we're putting that final pressing on this new creation that we're making. And if we take all of that off, we've lost all of that expansion. So that's kind of where because that's kind of the beginning of the story. You think you're going to scrape all of the flops and jeffs and the ages of distortion, the ages of all the, inverted things and all that kind of stuff. And so where you are right this minute, just get rid of all that and go back to this. But like anything in going back to, you've discounted everything that's here now that you forged. That was the whole idea. You forged all of this stuff. Yep. And if you scrape it off, you're actually going backwards, because you're not the being, and you've not creation that you move creation forward to. Well, you said you're going to take all of creation away in between that and this.
Right. Well, like I said, what actually prompted that entire conversation is because I've kind of felt like something similar to the way you're describing it, but I knew, and that's why the divine template blueprint came up, the original, if you will, right? Because that's a big theme too right now. I mean, everybody's, the originals are on the planet. Well, yeah, it's because we are all one and yet singular. So yeah, the originals are here. But everything, I mean, I can see in my own little physical ego smarmy life, right? My own handiwork from beginning to end, right? To set up certain things for me to experience. And if I were to change any one of those things, that could have changed my entire trajectory in one way or another. So I don't want to discount any of those. I'm not, so I get totally where you're coming from in regards to that. And I agree with it, because I don't think, again, that it is an either or situation in these things. And I think it, especially put that way, the way that you put it, to scrape all of that, which I view now as perfection, honestly. This is really up in this moment of now. I saw just before we met here this morning on Facebook, and I saw this little meme. It said, if you could delete anything from Earth, what would it be? And I have to tell y'all, I don't usually comment anymore on stuff, like that, but I did. And after that, and when you and I had our preliminary conversation moving into this, I thought, oh, this really is up. That's an energetic. And because my comment was not one thing, and I put it in all caps, it all serves. I know it's hard to hear. I get it. that a lot of what is purported to be happening is hard to take.
Mhm.
That I truly decide, but I truly have decided to trust the plan of the all that is, prime creator, that which propels all life. I trust that plan because you know what? This is what I've come to for myself. I'm all in, which means I'm going to trust in the entire thing. That's why I really feel like that is a huge metaphor. Yes, it is a great awakening on a huge level.
Yeah.
And and we, the collective we, will use everything at our disposal to get our individual attention.
Right.
Hey, Boobala in the chair, it's time to wake up. And it will do whatever, if that's your ticket in, fine. That's your ticket in. Whatever you need to get your attention, you're going to pull to you. It's a
Well, and
frequential thing.
when we were talking too last night, that you had said something about along the same where you were talking about I've come to learn this, that, and the other thing about that I've set these things up, and that you were discussing the whole what you just said, and so in that we jumped off to, well, we had this being that's come in to inform, right? And we had to somehow take squish all of us into this thing, right? Just to use a pictorial metaphor, squish it in, and there was enough, a little bit of a shaving of the all that got in here, and then that's how the coin mirror, and then all this stuff got piled on top of it through eons, right, of distortion and perceived abuse and all this kind of stuff, right? So being and on the putting more stuff on it, the level of each being the perceived good and the perceived bad, and that's another layer and a layer and layer, and yet and still with all of that, we managed to bring ourselves to where we are right this moment. And where we are right this moment is the final unwinding and unbinding of all, because otherwise you wouldn't see all of this. Otherwise, you wouldn't get all head up that, the administrator there in the purported White House is laying out the vaccine passport or the taxing every single mile that you drive or any of those you wouldn't even see it. So, and there's lots of other things that will point to that as well. So if we have all of that, so that's a miracle. That's, well, it's what we do because we're creator beings, but you can look at it from either spectrum that you want to. That's, wow, some kind of gobsmackingly delicious accomplishment. Or yeah, hey, we just threw off the coats and waking up. But in that, we've transformed. So the original blueprint, which got all fooled around with, which was the other thing, right?
Mhm.
Right.
So with that, it's light years behind. It may be the original, yes, and it was amazing, yes, but it was amazing because look what it let us do. Look what the foundation that it provided for us to do. And now all of this other is imploded. So all of us, before we could only fit a little skosh in, is now imploding. And that plus the physical being in the shirt is coming. And then you have that new entity, that new creation, that new beginning, that new original template.
When you were sharing before about how, if we were to scrape all of that off, right, before the final minting,
Mm-hmm.
I actually was shown the words cancel culture. That's the whole point behind cancel culture.
Yes.
In my view,
Good point.
let's forget about where we came from, because then you can forget about how empowering you might have found it to get to the place where you are now. Because you can look back here and go, oh yeah, by the way, I'm the one that set all that up. I
And
know.
if you forget that, then you can never be resolute and through the core of every dimension, every fiber of being and non being, that it never has to be repeated again because it's been done. And we don't,
Right.
creators don't repeat themselves. We don't mimic like the cancel culture wants and just go down a groove. So if
Right.
you scrape it off, you've devalued it, which means you've deflated all the expansion.
Well, such a valid point. It's so valid that you can't even erase it and start over, because it is the building blocks now for the new.
Right.
It's it itself is being transmuted in its shoes. And we, being the original and doing original, creates original. And nothing else can happen here.
Right.
Well, see, I maintain that that's pretty much the way. That's how we've managed to be all and singular. That's the only way. That's the only thing that separates us. And we planned it this way. We all kind of get bent
Wired.
out of shape because it's the programming that's going, oh, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. There can only be one way, only one way. Hold up. Why? That's why the panic inside, because the programs are like, no, this does not compute, when in fact, it is exactly the way we set it up so that we could that's the only way to experience autonomy in this. See, I still, man, I'm telling you, especially after this, this latest psychedelic trippy experience that I had, I am going to say this. I I am fully convinced with all of me that the prime creator has no personality, that we all want to assign to he or she, mother, father, God, all these different pronouns and all of that. That's the other reason that's up to, in my view, for everybody, is that they're really the prime creation has no. I think consciousness is kind of a new gig on creation itself. Is just that, it is creation. It's self organizing, self perpetuating, continually never ending creation. That is what it is. It is what we as individual singularities do with that creation that changes things.
Well, and it's the
Otherwise,
consciousness in and of its recognizing itself as a form and a cohesive structure in any, and it doesn't have to be just this kind of cohesive structure in any dimension and realm and all those, and actually all of them, because it's multidimensional. So, I mean, if people think that just here in the chair, I'm sorry, you got news for you, because there's a whole lot of the rest of you up this way and then quantum this way on another trajectory. So,
yeah, I'm convinced that heretofore things like schizophrenia actually is just the ability to see in multiple realms at once and not understand what one is looking at, seeing, experiencing. I'm convinced of that at this point. I,
well,
I don't know that for a
should
fact,
one
but
mention what they see depending on who you're standing next to? They may go, cool, tell me more. Or they may go, okay, that's it.
right, no, I realize that that's true,
Yeah.
but
Or
I
they say, wait a minute, this one's coming out of the box. We better go lock them up and throw away the key because we don't want them around other beings. We don't.
right, well, and that happens too, right? I mean, I can't get that out of my head about there was a shaman that had heard about a young man from his tribe that had been put in a mental institution in the United States. He came here and found that the whole problem was he was a shaman and didn't understand what he was going through. He So that's why I say that I have that kind of anecdotal evidence to see, because he took him back to his country and reunited him with his tribe, and mentored him. He was the next shaman for his tribe. So, I mean, that's an anecdotal puzzle piece that lends itself to me. I know I'm not crazy, but I know some of the stuff I have experienced could be considered that.
Well, for some reason it's come around 3 times, so I'm going to mention it because my my feeling process is keep swirling around your anecdotes to say anecdotal evidence. And I'm thinking, okay, well, see, there's a thing. It's a twist that we use because it's not proven. It's anecdotal. So it's not empirical studied, because that's the difference between an anecdotal comment about what something does and the science of it. And since, the non-science has been so well portrayed in the last 13 months that we should be really clear on what that is. But it's interesting. um it's also another mechanism to devalue one's senses, one's experience of something, because it's only anecdotal. It's not like it's real. It's just
Oh,
not
well,
like we can put. I know that's not what you're saying. I'm just saying the word in general, right?
I
It's
see.
not
Yeah.
like we can't put it in a, well, that's just anecdotal evidence, right? And somehow, because it's your experience, and these are the times, right? These moments to look around and step in and to realize, where are you holding yourself? And are you willing, and do you have the courage to meet the totality of yourself, connect with it, and move forward, play, dance, and create forward from that? Because that eliminates this whole scraping off stuff.
Yeah, let me just say that we, the three of us, when we had this conversation last night, I said that too. Very interesting.
Wow.
Did something hit your window?
Mm.
Interesting. This came up last night, and I said it, so I feel to say it here too. This is not for the faint of heart. When you say having the courage to meet yourself, you're not kidding about
Yeah,
that.
that's real.
Because it's
No, I'm really not kidding.
Yeah.
no, really not kidding. Because sometimes parts of yourself can scare the ever loving crap out of yourself. That's for me. Well, and I want to share too, BZ. I know I feel like you already know this, but you brought it up for anecdotal evidence. I view that term as the same as puzzle piece for me. And I hold them very lightly because I want to keep everything open.
Mhm.
I also personally believe in coincidence either. So to me, anecdotal evidence is a synchronicity to be matched with other puzzle pieces and synchronicities. But I don't hold them so tightly that I then begin to build a narrative around it, because I've seen what that looks like. I've witnessed out in the YouTube's Neverland what that looks like. When folks build a narrative around something, it becomes a belief. And now we're all hardwired, and this has to work in this particular kind of way. And that's kind of the same old for me. So I, how, my anecdotal evidence, while and I use those words because I'm open to seeing where it's maybe not what I think it is. Because I've been shown a lot of that since hanging out with the two of you, I gotta say. And I love that for me, well, when I started learning about the whole water piece and why it was working so well for me, I found out that one can go about proving almost anything they like to themselves.
Using the
A
interwebs.
or nay. All the information to support one way and the opposite way from that as being correct, all that information is there and easily found if one digs. That's why, especially for me personally, it has to come into, well, how is it affecting me, my situation, my individuality? Because it's going to be different for each person I see now.
Mhm.
That's another reason I like to couch it in that way and present things in that way for myself, because I can only share what has worked for me. That does not on any kind of level mean it will work for you. Any one of the Utes out there of me that, feel magnetically drawn.
Right, because that goes fill it it it's in the cosmic cookie bowl, right?
Right.
And it has
And
to do with
part of
your
that
your
stamping.
unique signature and your before you got here your um coming up with your blueprint, your divine plan for this particular life and all that kind of stuff. And it isn't all, some may be more energetically specific on something, right? But most of it is wanting to experience things, wanting to broaden the breadth and the depth of the consciousness and the experience. And like setting up an example. Well, um it was funny, it was, God, it was decades ago now, it just seems like the other day. But I remember I was having a conversation with someone, and we're sitting and it was about sitting up on the cloud, and I was trying to explain, they'd asked a question and I was trying to explain at that point a very simplistic view of it. Well, you're sitting up on the cloud and you're talking with everybody before you're going to come on down, and wanting to say, for example, you might want to experience now it's flown out of my head, you might want to experience forgiveness, right? Or generosity or something like that.
Yeah, Neil Donald Walsh wrote something like that about that. I'll never forget Gina Cummings. Gosh, she popped right in. I love her. She shared that. I'm going to link the video. There's a little poem, "The Little Soul and the Sun,"
Oh,
and I
really?
got to,
I don't know that it.
yeah, and it talks about just what you're speaking on right there.
Well, you're sitting up on the cloud, and so there's a group, and this is me on the ground talking to this other person who if you're going to use the term which you don't like, very awake at the moment, had just was starting to think about that and asked. And I said, well, this is a simple kind of a thing, but if you're sitting up on the cloud and you're talking about it and you say you want to, let's say, forgiveness, right? Or that's not the one example, but maybe it'll come back to me. And so then you dive off the thing and you go into your embodiment and you're doing this. And so I said, well, what do you think would be the kinds of things that you would experience? I said, well, forgiveness. Well, I would, yeah, it works better with the one that I actually came up. But anyways, I would think about this, and it was the opposite. So that to give people things and that kind of stuff. And I said, could be, that might be one way to do it, but an awful lot of way is if you don't have, if you're squashed down, or you have things removed from you, or you have things done to you, right? Then you're is in a place where you can forgive yourself as being in the thing, and the ones that have supposedly done something to you. And so they were like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Well, actually it does, because that's how if you don't, how do you expand on something if you have the absence of that? and yet and still you're you. This goes back into what we started. How do you get you into this vessel? So there's just a glimmer because the body's animated, so you've got that, at least that glimmer. You may be bearing it, and you can then walk the path and make different choices to move forward. You could go to one, which all of us have in various iterations, go to one extreme and says, well, forgiveness, I'm going to do, this was done to me, so I'm going to do more of this to others, and you know and then maybe I'll forgive them that. So it's a kind of a retribution thing. It's a negative frequency energy. And what is it? It's constricted. It's not good or bad. It's just a different way that the resonant frequency is configured.
Right.
And
It's just a different a desire to experience the frequential existence in a different manner.
polarized.
And there's no that I've really been shown very clearly too that the whole we only have issues when we want to judge each other because we
Yeah.
don't want to play together. That's all.
Right.
If I don't want to play your game, now you're all butthurt. Now we have issue.
Well, it's polarized, but one way, in
Right.
directions, and since the whole is all of that, right? Because
Right.
everything is everything, not one piece missing. And as you have expansion, you got more everything going forward. So it goes back to something I've been saying, in the conversations that we've been doing for years, where it's source going forth to no source. You go out, away, and you coming home to. So this, in essence, what we're doing right here is a big homecoming, so that everything, not just here on this blue planet, but everything in all of sources, multiverses, has that next home
Iteration. Yeah.
plate, or the home base, or the home foundation has exponentially, right, expand.
Right.
And if you
Mhm.
just go back to the original template, so yes, go back to that in a sense of realizing, noticing what was there, and the distortions, but all of that which brought you to the ability to realize that it was the original template, and this different things, all the frequency levels, all of the structures that each frequency vibration was in, recognizing it. That's because you didn't recognize that before, because you were sitting on the cloud going, well, this will be easy. Why would this be hard?
Yeah. So saith those who haven't been here. Well, I want to take a second and give a shout out to everybody who has joined us. We do have 12 folks in the room, and I do see your questions there in specific to a couple of people. And I want to tell you, I am not ignoring those. I'm holding them to the end so we don't disrupt this portion of the conversation. But I will be posing your question uh, to BZ, because I happen to live with Lisa, so I know Lisa is not up to date on that as well, unless she's got something she hasn't shared. But I will pose that question to both of them. But Joshua Benjamin said, think about how the gods of the world would change if you lived on another planet with a different sky. Yeah, I could see that. Kevin said, I think that consciousness is full of personalities, all of them, us. Well, yeah, but I get where you're going with that. And I would be in agreement. I don't think it's a yes or no kind of question. I just feel like everything is yes. I know that can be maddening sometimes, but that's what I've come to, man. I've come to, it's all, yeah, yep. Yep. And boy, I'm telling you, that feels so much easier too, by the way.
Right.
And it explains
Anything else resistance, and boy, you feel resistance right about now.
Yeah, right. Joshua said, I define God as light energy. It takes light and water to grow anything beyond bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like you're right about that, probably about the building blocks of it, but all I can see is that ever moving, ever expanding on all levels and layers, micro to macro, all the way in between the toroidal field and the throwing off isn't the right word, but it's just a self-perpetuating, I don't know. Like I said, after having experienced that, of course, I'm open to being shown more.
Well, you
I'd
can
like to have a
in many
breath.
ways with again, this we're using the human linear brain, and there may be many we's who can then hold it in a more multidimensional frame where there is no past, present, and future, or there is, but it's all right this moment. So,
Right.
depending on
Because that's the way I see
how
it.
you language the description of that, right? It's and.
Yes.
Another way to divide it is you've got light is information and love is the field of it's the creational field. It's the actual creational fabric from which everything can then become out of potentiality into individuatedness and come and have structures or cohesive non-physical I'm going to say embodied, even though I'm not talking about necessarily just a being, right,
Right.
into a structure. You can
Right.
also, same kind of thing, you can look at the thing is that you have the frequency, so you've got the energetics, because all of source, all that is, all of the creational thing or no thingness is that balance. It's that 0 point between the negative, I'm sorry, between the positive, my brain will catch up with my mouth, between the um the feminine energetic and the masculine energetic. So light is information. You could think of it as data. You could think of it as all the building blocks of all that is in form and no form. So light is a divine masculine frequency, and then the love is the divine feminine frequency. And when
Ah,
the two work together, because love and light aren't exactly the same frequency. So when the two work together, you have the 0 point, you've got the balance, and then you have all
you were
ingredients.
calling to mind for some reason. I saw immediately when you were saying that I saw I'll probably get the first name wrong, but I want to say Dr. Luc Montagnier. I probably pronounced that wrong too. I got this from David Wilcock's book, Source Field Investigations. Dr. Luc Montagnier was a French biologist, um, he had DNA in a hermetically sealed, apparently, test tube or whatever, and removed the DNA from it, but apparently light formed around it. I may not be saying this right, but it brought that to mind for some reason when you were saying that. And I wanted to share that. Joshua Benjamin said a schizophrenic person by definition would hear other people speaking in their head like Deadpool. I don't know what that is. I know it's some kind of show a lot of people have watched, but psychosis is believing in something that can't be proven, like God. Well, that's kind of handy, ain't it?
Yeah, sure enough.
I would say that's a direct building block of the manipulation and the,
Right. That's the legal definition, is it? Because wow. Okay. All right. Well, oh well. Kevin said, Kevin said, I think that is the same. I think that is the same thing with those on the autistic spectrum as well. Their perception is different than ours, and they
Yeah.
don't know how to deal with what they experience.
Mhm.
I think they know how to deal with it just fine. It's the rest of us,
I don't know how to deal with it. Yeah.
right? And that's very frustrating for them. And Kevin, make sure you and I have to have a conversation, because now this has come out of your own mouth. I have been contacted by a viewer about this very subject and you. So that I find highly interesting.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. Oh my goodness.
My nephew is well, he's got Down syndrome, but it's in that realm of perception and how they and um there is a lot of habitual, ingrained, targeted, and programmed discounting of beings like that,
Mhm.
of any that's any difference,
Oh yeah.
because it's they're not, they're functioning less than, and so on and so forth. And um anytime one sits for a moment and just notices, could be with any being, could be with someone who hears music in their head and maybe doesn't even know about music, but can go to piano and play it,
Right.
record it, and they can never play it again, but that came through them. So there's lots of different things that don't fit, well, that didn't used to fit into the thing. And right now, that's what, go back what we were talking about before. Do you have the courage?
Well, that right. Kevin did say or communicate. Uh, so I love to make that a marker right here that we will be delving into that subject. I got a feeling with Kevin and separately, the way that that whole thing has come about is very interesting to me. Joshua Benjamin said, ultimately, life evolved from water. When NASA looks for life on other planets, they look for light slash heat and water. Just dirt doesn't equal life. Seafood is cannibalism. Well, here's my thought on that. They have found life in areas of this planet that they never expected to. So I feel that, again, life is self-perpetuating, it's self-organizing. I think we all see that in nature quite a
Yeah.
bit. It's a self-sustaining mechanism, and yes, it goes through cycles and all of that. uh, but to look at even any kind of planet that doesn't have those items on them and say there's no life there, I feel it's highly inaccurate. Only because
Sheila, now I'm thinking of, in that same book you were talking about, Source Field Investigations, there was an experiment with some electrical impulses and light, and spontaneously some flies manifested. And so to me, that's speaking on the thing that you said, that propensity for life is there if certain like chemical
well, or just
things, if you
simply
will.
observation and consciousness. Look at the slit experiments.
Yes.
Just observation and consciousness has the propensity, I'm saying, because that's what we're doing here. We
Well, it's more
create
than
in
just
the
propensity,
moment.
because it changes it every time. The observer, right, is
Right.
Yeah. It's
how
by design.
it's the that's it. It's the power of creation, because the thought is meeting that which is, and then the emotional. So you could ask um sorry, it's he's flown out of my head, but um Bruce Lipton. Ask Dr. Bruce Lipton,
Oh,
who started out very, biochemical scientist, very rigid, very confined by that. And, and he's been such a wonderful.
I love his lectures because he started out as a dyed-in-the-wool scientist. And the lecture of his that first introduced me to him is he said that his experiments proved to him that his theory was wrong.
Right.
And he had the courage, this is back again, to follow that and see where it led. And so, yeah.
And when he does he carries it through it, whether it's stuff you listen to from way back then in his very first book, or he just done a brand new conversation. It's his way of noticing in his own world, and he uses that in it could be in empirical data, double blinds, it could be in all sorts of ways, or in conversational. And so he said, well, I noticed this. Well, what is that telling me? What's that? So it's this whole process that he's going through, and not taking the line, not taking the company line, whatever its shape is. And we make the line.
Well, and that goes back to what you were saying about, we were saying about courage. Lisa, I see you've got something.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking of, you have to have the courage to have the conversation with the thing that you want to. It's a dance. You're in cooperative, co-creative dance. And when you can engage in it that way, then you have that, I'll take one step over here, and then you go that way. And before you know it, you've created this whole brand new thing together.
Well, that's what, and you're absolutely right. Having well, first of all, the courage to even just consider having the conversation. Let's get to that first. Considering the idea of entertaining a conversation, because in some cases there's that that closed a system that some operate within, and that, again, no judgment. That's cool. Everybody has chosen to experience things in particular kinds of way. This is at least what I've shown myself to be so for me. And
well, there's also a willingness to be wrong. Like, it's okay to get it wrong. I use a lot of dance metaphor, because really there is no right or wrong way to dance. It's about moving your body and feeling free and expressing yourself. And so if you can see it and feel it in that fashion, that there's no wrong answers. It was like, okay, so that felt really awkward. I probably won't do that maneuver again, because I feel more comfortable with this kind of vibe over here. You go, okay, so that was an experience, one that I probably won't choose again, but there's no judgment in it. There's no, it doesn't have to be the end of the world. You don't have to marry every subject. So it's okay to take a couple of steps back in this dance, because you're getting a new perspective on things. You're checking out, how do things look back here? I'm getting data back here, but I'm also having a ton of fun. I'm twirling around the dance floor. I'm participating in life. I'm hearing the music, and I'm moving in the way that I'm being called to move. And it sets my spirit free. And my free spirit is really what's doing the most exciting thing. I want to get in alignment with that free spirit of mine, because it has the cutting edge point of view like that. The eagle perspective that knows where it's going and how to get there from here. And so, that joy in the dance is how you make sure that you're connected to part of you that has complete and utter knowing of where to go, and then just have fun in all the rest of it.
Right. Part of the building blocks of that courage is again, that neutrality. So that 0 point, when you're playing with something, when you're dancing with it, when you're investigating it, when you're looking at different things, um, you can have, you can, back to the science, you can have a supposition, right? You know, you can look at something and make a supposition about, well, I think, like Dr. Lipton was describing, it does this. And then you
Right.
go and you look at things, and then instead of sweeping it under the rug, he was like, well, wow. Well, I could, you know,
Didn't
but
expect
that's the
that.
case. You don't have to be a scientist. It's the case with everybody and how you do things. And there may be, the other thing is, because you're going back to the courage and the scraping stuff off. So how you came to one thing and played with something will take 20 years ago, right? If you're old enough to be 20 years and still be in embodiment, and how you do it now would be vastly different. There may be some similarities. There may be some, a couple dance steps from here you moved into there, but your expansion and path along the way has given you, could be depending on where you are at this moment, could giving you two things. One, it could give you where there's kind of blocked off corridors where you don't have the same ability to dance and notice and be neutral about it. So just noticing, right? And not judging, not observing, just you're here, you look here, you do this, you do that, and you realize, oh, that comes and that comes, and it just is. It isn't bad, it isn't good, it isn't this and
Right.
that. So you may at this point be where you actually have different blocks in your maze that have been firmly, could be beliefs, would be a really good way to describe those. And that has actually shifted or truncated off a lot of your landscape, your vibrational landscape, your noticing ability landscape, because they're partitioned it off. And so so it's only yes or no, and you can't see the whole field. It can be something has happened. You talk about the things that are going on with you, with Lisa and myself, with everybody. I mean, everybody is going through the same thing. The metaphors are different, but the foundation of all of it is hyper leaps of expansion. So it could be now that you're looking at, um, and so you could be using the same from 20 years ago to now with that, or 20 years ago to now, and you don't have those blocks, you don't have those things, because you've more fully embraced consciously the noticing part, the 0 point, the neutrality, just being with it, connecting with it, being subject to one another in that connection, and whatever comes forth then comes forth. And then you can step 2 more days, you know, to use a time marker forward, and have a totally different experience from the same total noticing. Because you're maybe drawn to something, it may have sparked creational force within you, and now you're playing more in this way. So when you're doing that, you're actually calling forth more area, more energy, more action of the frequency molecules dancing in that direction. So we're always there is no wrong or right way. There may be perceived things, and there may be your own, in that moment, gravitating to one thing or another more because you like it, because it's informing you in a way that you want to play. And that's where we are now. So if we're always talking about going back to something, it's like picking yourself up and dropping you back in the box that was there.
Um, what I just was shown when you said going back to something, right? I have been feeling, for me, more of a pulling something forward from there, from that time, right? Um,
And that's different movement, though, isn't it?
right. Oh, yes, it certainly is. And it's like, okay, so, oh, this is very interesting to me, the way this was just shown to me. Oh my gosh. Um, what kid hasn't had, those moments where you wrap yourself in your blankie, right? And that's a very comforting feeling. And I was just shown that when I used the words reaching back and pulling forward, I was shown that because I want it all, I want all of what I've experienced to be wrapped in that as I pull it forward. That's why I don't want to scrape it off. I want, because this is a holding process. I see for me, so could be different for everyone else. I don't, because we were talking about, well, I've seen that metaphor all over the place. You cannot, there's cutting off, killing things about yourself is not, at least it's not for me. That's not where it's at. Anything that shows up in my field is for me. It's a piece of me. It wants to be loved into wholeness. I've experienced that for myself. That is not anecdotal evidence. That is a knowing I have experienced. So for me, that's the way I try to look at all this. So that's why I think I was shown that because, well, ever since I started this little very public journey, now I see, right, with the conscious conversations, it has been all about the joy. I had that sign behind Lisa's head way before I ever started the channel or any of that. I've been looking for me, searching for me. Who am I? What do I like? What do I want to do? What do I want to be when I grow up? That's kind of what, because I really didn't allow myself to do any of that kind of thing, before, for all those goofy ass reasons we all give ourselves.
Well, and certainly not those things that were at the genesis of you, rather
No,
than
that's right.
put on you or shunted
Or
by.
willingly accepted, because obviously, everybody gets to choose. So, which is another reason why I see it in the way that I do now. So yeah, when you were saying that, I see it for me as being all inclusive. That's where this thing with cancel culture, they try to act like that's how to be all inclusive. No, it's not. That's like cutting off a piece of, that's, how is that in any way? That's why I said it's all metaphor, right? For what, or at least that's how I see it, all metaphor, the out there for what
Yeah.
I'm doing in here. And the only way to be all inclusive is, oh, I don't know, include it all. Oh, there's a novel concept. Nothing left out.
But there's
Not
where the courage comes in again, because someone including it all and being in a holding position, right? And in a cohesive structure that way, people can be at whatever stages they're at doing their thing. That does not diminish either one of them in any way,
no,
lest
that's
they
right.
let it diminish them. Then they don't have the courage to be in. It's another way to say, that just came in, is that you're in the 0 point. It's just a linear word to describe it. Um,
Right.
on the one hand, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of focus and attention and commitment to an energetic process, a spiritual process, a clear, focused thinking. It's actually feeling process. On the other hand, it's as simple as breathing, and it's innate to you because it is your core. It's just how much stuff you got.
Right. So I love that you guys were talking about this. They picked up that thing with the autistic really well. And I want to tell you guys, we are going to do that as a conversation. I feel, um, Kevin's going to flip when he hears about it. I'm really excited about it. Hopefully we'll know something by next week with the way the energy has been, I think, but obviously the time is now. So that's very interesting to me. Um, my sister has joined us and she said there's always more. That has become my understanding. Joshua said, imagine being light. It's void of everything human. This world fades. Oh yeah, that's why I said it's self-perpetuating, self-organizing, never-ending life. There's no thought to prime creation. My foot. That's my take, my experience. Let me just put it that way. That is how it is a frequency of absolute love because it's accepting of everything. There is no other thought but life and expansion, life and expansion. It's a ever, that's the way I experience mm, the macro. It takes my breath away to even just be swept up in that again.
Well, think of um it's because it's more than just light, but think of pure potentiality, so no thingness. And you could scoop up a big handful, to use a metaphor, of no thingness, and that's molding clay. That's creational force.
Mhm.
And when you as an individual, and because right now that's mostly who we're talking to, is individuated cohesive structures, but you as an individual is grabbing that and playing with it and molding that creational force with you. You're taking your emotional frequencies, right? And you're using that to fashion and form in, could be totally something in form, it could be a combination of etheric form and inform. So again, whoever is molding it at that moment is bringing it into being. And you have the pre-matter template for that, where in your imagination or in your musings or in your just looking out softly or in your meditations or in various ways that each being does it, and there may be multiple ways that each being does it, you are you're massaging and playing with that pre-matter template of it. You're feeding it. And as Abraham Hicks would say, you're in the vortex there and you're having all of these different things. And so if you're in a moment in the shirt here and it's not going so well, you got shitty stuff in the vortex and you got this and you got splendid things and all of that stuff. And then as you give more attention to it, as you have a choice point where the consciousness truly is invigorating that, then you have something that you can pull out of the pre-matter and materialize it. Because what you're speaking of is putting it into matter.
Yeah, I thought, but that's how I feel like we create. That's and each our own reality, you know. Susan Treves had joined us and she said that someone said the autistic kids are from light and are having a hard time with the darkness here. They're trying to help us. We need to help them. I feel as though what that's I'm really anxious to have that conversation. There, you guys are so cool to talk about this. And Joshua Benjamin said Down syndrome people have one foot in heaven and one on earth. When they do speak, it's not ignorance that comes out. I believe they are psychic to the point of being bored with us. Well, that could be it. Susan offers a thought. Maybe with the nonverbal kids, we need to talk telepathically. We need to learn to communicate telepathically with thought. Actually, I'm learning to do that anyway. I've been communicating with, well, you guys, some, not as much as I'd like, which is something I'm changing. Um, experimenting with it in some ways, right? Proving things to myself, showing myself how I communicate with myself, with others in that fashion. Um, so let me just say this. If you're going along your day, you've had a conversation with me. I'm speaking to anybody in this room or anybody that'll watch this later. You have a thought of me. You don't have any idea why. There was nothing necessarily that, but all of a sudden I pop in your head. Mark it down. reach out. Let me know. You might be part of what I'm doing. And you could help me by saying, hey, you popped into my consciousness unbidden just now. Got a message for me? And try it. Let's just see. You never know. I might have been reaching out to you to see if you got my message. So don't be shy. If you hear from me, let me know. That's the kind of playground I want to, play in, right? Is that kind of stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that if I say, no, I wasn't thinking of you, doesn't necessarily mean that. It could also mean other things. Let me just say that. I have had that happen too, where I've been contacted by someone. You popped into my head. I don't know why. I don't know why either, but we made a note of it. And then later on, something would happen. Oh, okay, interesting. Maybe that's why, right? So I don't know. For me, it's a fun game.
Well, your souls could have been sitting having a picnic lunch, talking about stuff, and saying, "Hey, let's wake these two up down there." And
Could very well be, like I said, I love doing that. That's part of I see that as part of the exercising the muscles that we do have. We do have them. It's just do we use them consciously? There was a portion up there where Susan talked about that the whole reason we're having this conversation is learning to communicate telepathically. Well, I think that that's something we do, but we discount it a lot. And it's not whatever my thoughts were about what telepathy has changed. It's not, like you got the phone up to your ear. It's not like that at all. It's a feeling and it's very subtle. I now get that. Lisa and BZ were trying to help me with that. And it is.
I was going to say, I remember that conversation we had it was a couple of years ago now, but it was actually a very cool and poignant in any moment, because even if you meet it from that was a revelation to you, or you've had experience beyond it, it's another way to clear up your own communication to all manner of beings where they are in their aperture of consciousness.
Yeah, it was, that's been one of the most awesome side effects of having these conversations with you guys is my own consciousness expansion, right? Joshua Benjamin offered the interesting side note is that the palmistry marking for the Parakeet shaman is the same mark indicating Down syndrome, the simian line running across the palms. Joshua, I think maybe I need to have a conversation with you. I would love for you to contact me if you're a palmist. I've never had a conversation with a palmist. I would love it if you would like to come and have a conscious conversation with me, because he continues on here and says Fragile X syndrome is a headline that runs across the palm, which also has a separate love line. They are merged into one in a simian line. The world doesn't want equal rights. I skipped down to his next comment. The world doesn't want equal rights because that would mean repealing every law, aiding one race or gender above another. Their cancel culture narrative is about ruling the rest, not unity. Well, yes, you're right about that. That's one of the things I see about it too. Jennifer said, oh my goodness, not that this is not a common phrase. Yeah, I almost messaged you this morning, Sheila, to tell you that I have discovered what I want to be when I grow up. Oh, how cool. You better message me. We'll have to have a conversation about that. I love that, Jennifer Brown. Ah, how cool. So Revolutioneer just joined us and said, just tuning in, but heading outside to play. Aw, she said, thanks to the three of you for adding positive ripples to the pond. It's a grass pulling day. Ah, rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. Oh, Kevin. Okay, so that might be what this viewer was picking up on. Kevin said, my niece Kelsey is down. She is coming to visit soon. Her hugs are straight from heaven." Oh, wow. Okay, so again, that makes this all the more interesting. Susan said, "Telepathic communication is our future. We need to practice it, reawaken it." I agree. If you reach out while I'm in the shower, then at least wash my back. Joshua, you're funny. I got a remedy for that. I have a son with Down syndrome who has every psychic palmistry marking there is within his palms. This is Joshua again. He's also an 11 life path. Yeah, well, see, I got to tell you, I have long thought that these beings were, well, for one thing, they're like okay, so this came up earlier when we were speaking on speaking on this, and it's really part of that other conversation, but I feel led to say it here. There's the thought that, there are things that have been done that has caused this damage in these beings. And while that may be so, I wouldn't doubt that in the least. I'm also reminded back again to David Wilcock's source field investigations, in that they have done studies where they altered the DNA of, it was a particular kind of fly. And within a certain number of generations, the original reasserted itself. And the anomaly that had been inserted in the DNA corrected itself. And quite frankly, I think that has been part of the adulteration, if you will, of the food supply. Was that, guess what? The original blueprint was actually slowly through the generations of the human. Remember, life is self-perpetuating in my view. Everything is so Mama Nature reasserts herself after, so you can oh, I just heard you can run but you can't hide. You see, you can change it if you like, but if that's not the way it's supposed to be eventually through the iterations.
Well, it's also not static. So if
Right,
you're on the planet, even if you're eating food that's changing that stuff and you haven't hop off the planet is going through, Gaia is going through her own frequency shifts and changes, and has been ahead of us for quite some time, and now we're catching up.
right,
So kind of that forward momentum is already moving you there, no matter how much stuff you choose or to eat or not.
right. Nope, you're absolutely right. So Teresa said, speaking of the cancel culture and the fact that the UFO disclosure is ramping up for the summer, my thoughts are it will stop the cancel culture in its tracks. Nature's desire to stay in balance is right before our eyes, unfolding in such a huge way. I agree with that, Teresa. As far as the whole UFO thing, I'm of two minds about that. I I I I saw a piece of art yesterday that made me, when I saw it, I felt the galactics. I felt the, well, my ship in particular. I've been feeling it, well, for quite some time. I've been feeling like it's parked right above where I am. I don't I wasn't always hearing it, but lately I'm also hearing it. So for me, these ships exist slightly out of phase because they are multidimensional in and of themselves too. So um, I do feel like there could be some of that, about to pop off. You know what? The Pentagon is going to be releasing some report here very soon, I believe it is, that a lot of people think is going to contain a lot of stuff.
Well,
And
again,
so,
there's that courage and the neutrality, because if you're thinking about disclosure and that there's only good fluffy bunny aliens, well, then you need to review your whole non-local picture, because
right.
that's part of how we are in this trajectory, in the inversion, in the God functions of all, and I use that intentionally, of all things going on the planet. Um, and there is that balance as well, because that's how you, when you have the polarity, when you have the duality and that separation, right? It's separation, which means that it was whole and it got separated,
Yeah.
just on a very linear base way to describe it.
Right.
So there's both, and it's a frequency, and it's an actual manifestation.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what you mean, Joshua Benjamin, but that's very interesting. He said, when I see the dead return, they are back to normal as well. If they died in a car wreck, they aren't disfigured after death. Okay, I'm not quite sure I understand what you just said, but I'd love to hear more about it. I really would like for you to reach out and let's see about doing a conversation. Jennifer said about the autism topic, I can say from a personal and current situation that there are such powerful soul level powers expressed in these beings. Autism is not actually a handicap. Uh, yeah, I would agree with you on that. That's a huge conversation. I hope you'll be tuning in for that one when we have it. I'll give plenty of notice. Um, Joshua said, when I see people return, they are made whole again. Oh, yeah, we have to have a conversation, sir. Teresa said, yes, Sheila, Rex Bear just put out on the League project FBI documents from the 40s showing about them being multidimensional and more. Yeah, that's why I said I've that's the way I feel about it. But see, when it feels to me too, though, that that's we. I am so grateful for you, Lisa, and the fact that you saw that thing by Anelia Benz. That has been that was a big turning point for me in my life.
Well,
The
me too,
phrase that
actually.
fear is an invitation that one does not have to accept. That was probably one of the best pieces of information, data, advice. I don't care how you want to slice it. That little bit, right? That little nugget right there was, mwah. It was just so perfect for me on so many levels
It's a
because it is so, so. So what, BZ?
I said it's a balancing shorthand,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's something that you can just have in the back of your beingness, and something comes up and you're like, oh, and the little shorthand ticker tape goes across. It changes your vibration right away and lets you go into neutrality, lets you go into a noticing stance. There may be parts of the shirt that are going, holy smokeroonies.
Well, that's what yeah.
But instead of leaping off in that direction or acting from that direction, right? You're able to choose,
Right.
and
Well,
you're
there's a,
freaking out, but nonetheless,
right.
right? I'm not
There
in.
are those that have watched this channel who will recognize the fact that, it's all about consent. It's all about consent. And to win something field in a fearful manner, they are asking or trying to get a reaction, which is consent. And so that's what I mean when I say it's an invitation. It is just like with problem, reaction, solution. Everything is presented. How we receive it is all up to us.
That's why we're all complicit in all of that's what's been going on.
That's that's the difference between, for me, having been a victim and now standing in a different place than I was before when I claimed that victimhood, right?
And the complicity can then be expanded to, depending on, this isn't in all things for all people, but in different venues, different focuses, where you are not only complicit, but you are not actively engaged, but it's a step beyond, or actively engaged. And some are all three in various, things.
No, exactly right. Wow, this has really been quite the catch up, ladies. I mean,
Very nice.
I know, Lisa, you've been really quiet, but then you've been having.
Yeah, I'm finding myself feeling very sleepy.
Are you? Well, you really have been, experiencing the energies rather um, in a very physical way lately, as
Yeah,
a lot of folks, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to having conversation with you guys about the autism or the autistic spectrum kind of thing. I'm hoping to have the viewer who brought this to, so we will table that. Everybody, make sure to look out for that. Um, oh, Teresa said, I've learned that fear is the greatest separator. Well, that would be a side function, I think, too. Yeah. Yeah, Joshua Benjamin, I'm finding you very interesting. I don't recall your name before, but I would love to have a conversation with you, dude. Listen, you guys, this is what he said. Side note, my dad used to tell this story about my mom being ET's side chick while she was pregnant with me. They experienced the blue light paralysis, and mom spoke a foreign language. And so, yeah, Joshua, you got to reach out, man. I would love to have a conversation with you. This is very interesting. Um, oh, and he was born in Alaska. So, very interesting. Okay, cool. Jennifer said, yes, Sheila and BZ, those are ways to consent that is not visible to many. Well, yeah, I mean, I'll listen until Lisa shared it with me in the way that in which she did. Because didn't you even tell the story about it? Like,
Yeah, I could tell it now.
please
Um,
do.
and it's not my story, but it really stuck with me for the same reason, Sheila. And I shared it with you because it's a powerful story.
Well, because when anybody can feel into the story itself and put themselves right there and go, oh, God, it's an alchemical epiphany kind of thing, or at least it was for me.
Yeah, me too. She said she was having a in the bed moment. She woke up. Something woke her and she just found herself awake. And she saw before her a portal open and a gnarly looking entity stuck its face through the portal. And she said to herself, oh, look, an entity. And she said, because she now knows that all that was an invitation into fear. And all an invitation into fear is agreement. So this entity poked its head through my, through the portal into my room. And his invitation was, hi, I'm a gnarly monster who's come to mess with you. And the only agreement he needs to play with you is you saying, oh my, look at that scary monster that's come to play with me. And that's simply the only agreement that it needs. That's your permission. And I never thought of it that way. But if you stand in, you know who you are, and you know that nothing has any power over you, then there is nothing to fear ever. And so fear then would be an acceptance of a side game. And I don't want to play side games. So I found that to be very powerful too, that fear is a side game and you can choose to play or not. It's entirely up to you.
Well, the fact that it was presented to me, quite literally, in the same way as it was presented to Anelia Benz, and I had that information on board, I can attest to the fact that, hey, that actually works. So that, and that too is now not anecdotal evidence. That's a knowing I have from direct experience.
Yeah, when you got what you're doing, when you do what you guys are describing, it's standing in neutrality, the 0 point. So you're out, you've actually stepped. When you stand in neutrality, when you sit, if you're meditating or whatever, you can be in all sorts of action poses, but you are in the 0 point, which means, and you can, if you want to, there are papers written on it to scientifically prove that you actually are in an energetic envelope that is not linear time and space. It's not, you have stepped out of duality. You could be sitting, in this chair in duality, but in your frequency cone that you've created, have stepped out of duality. And you can do that when you're just at work and you're standing, if you're standing up at work and doing something and you're wanting to make a decision, instead of being in the mind, you're in the heart. You take a moment to go into that space, whatever your shorthand is for that, and you can clearly have the capability to choose knowingly, consciously, with all components of that choice revealed to you in that moment.
Yeah.
And what that courage that we talked about is like, think of that as a pop-up tent that takes that ability with you wherever you are, whatever you're doing. You don't have to be oming in with just the right music and everybody's quiet and all this kind of stuff, I mean,
Although I enjoy that too.
well,
Oh,
yes, I do, but I have to laugh because, when I'm sitting in the crystal room, turn the other way in this chair and have it night set, sometimes it's like, there's earthquakes going off because I have two Aussies who thinking in that moment, I live in a tiny house, so in that moment playing in the living room, which borders on the crystal room, and you have
Oh,
two 45-pound dogs go slammo into the, you just have to be able to do it anywhere. So.
right, right. So again, Joshua offered military family means that we lived everywhere else, and alien stuff only happened in Alaska. Again, I think there's a connection. I'm really looking forward to getting a chance to have a chat with you. I was born at Wright Pat, so I find it very interesting. You're from a military family too. Jennifer said the energy of this bubble is intense and activating. And I do feel that I can feel the energy palpating through this as well. So Joshua offers that palmistry can reveal a master number life path, even if your numerology doesn't. Why? Because of parental inheritance. Birth stars only indicate destiny. Oh, that's interesting. Trish said, my favorite scene in any movie is Lab Rat, when she stands there before him and says, you have no power. Oh, Labyrinth, not Lab Rat. I know what you're saying. That's my favorite scene too. Jennifer Connelly standing before David Bowie. And she says, through time, I can't remember it exactly. I just love that saying. And then she realizes you have no power over me, and he disappears.
can you hear her?
No, I can't hear.
I can.
Well, I know.
Okay.
I can hear her on the non-ear way, but
I was frozen.
Yes.
I am frozen.
So that means you were frozen on both feeds because Lisa's on that feed and I'm on this feed.
And you froze, but I could hear your voice still.
Well, yeah, through the bedroom door. Yeah, that's easy enough. So on my back.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It was brief.
So Q Team said that's how it feels. The whole world is at a conjunction of 0 point energy. The force field is building around us at a 0 point. I'm waiting for everything to lift off. LOL. That's
And
cute.
that's where the courage comes in to step into that. Because when you do that, you have to give up a lot of stuff.
You do.
You have to give up attachment. You have to give up being right or wrong. You have to give up,
Yeah,
I
that one or easy one for
did
me.
better, right? So there's lots of stuff, and seemingly, warm, loving, good memory sort of stuff to give up, but it is giving it up in a sense, no matter what it is, because it's relinquishing that hold on it that it may have on you or you may have on it, or a combination of both. And instead, doesn't mean it has to disappear. You just have to give it up. And when you give it up, then you can come into connection with it. Then you can come into coherence with it, and where you're subject to one another. It is its own thing, whether it's a being, a thing, a tradition, whatever it is, and you are your own, and you can come in that connection with one another.
Yep. That's why I say
Without having those pulls that are there.
am I still frozen?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, Q Team said, yeah, a lot of this physical materialistic relationships that were broken, nothing resonates no more, only in your future. Not quite sure if yeah, because it's got to be all new, I think. Well, I don't know exactly how much time you had, BZ, but I also know that this was the middle of the day for you. And there was a question that was asked in the beginning that I want to go back to because I promised that I would. And I thought this might need at least a few minutes because very early on, when Karen Wilson Elliott joined, she asked, which it's HTJ, but I know she means Hat J. And then Kevin actually added, and Randy, been thinking about them with Easter coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
And so I want to go on record. A lot of people think that because Lisa and I went to the trial in Knoxville, that we have some sort of inside information, again, too, because of our association with BZ. But I don't have any inside information. I get to communicate on, because honestly, I didn't know any of those folks before the trial. I was led to go over and sort of cover the trial, and was very fortunate then to be introduced to BZ, but I really don't have any inside information. I do know that there's been something recently appeared on the IUV, a rather huge document. But other than that, I don't have anything to add to that. Do you, BZ?
Well, again, I'm feeling into the way you're phrasing the inside information. So,
Well, I mean, no, that's well. I mean, I have feelings and conversations. I don't have as many conversations in my heart space with people as I know that the two of you do, right?
well, I can say that I have linear conversations and heart space conversations with both of them all the time. So that would be one way to describe it.
Okay, so yeah, see,
As
we
far
don't really talk about that. So
Excuse me? Your thing went robo, so I didn't hear what you.
Oh, yeah, we don't have any connection. So.
right. That's all I was saying is that
Yeah.
Lisa and I, neither one of us have any of that kind of connection. And honestly, it doesn't come up with us unless I ask the question, which I just haven't recently.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think there's a sentence, a phrase, a meme that goes around. Don't confuse inaction or perceived inaction or perceived frontline in your face action as inaction. So there's lots of stuff going on. And I think another way to answer that question is, again, depending on how one holds their perception and their consciousness of a situation, and how I say both, either Randy or Heather at that moment, are holding where they are in that moment. That makes sense. So, you could look at it completely linear and saying, well, it's a raw deal and they're in jail. You could look at it another way, and I know there are lots of comments that say that, not on this chat, whereas hey, they're rat bastards and they deserve what they got. So again, there are many different ways to look at it. My answer would be, the best one is I connect with them all the time on a linear and a heart-based way, and that everything is connected. Everything that's going on is all connected, completely connected, far more than even if you think you feel into what that means. It's a lot bigger than that. And there's a whole lot of stuff going on and unfolding and coming to fruition, coming to materialization. And each one of us has a part in that. So each one of us has a part directly as it relates to all of that with the financial slavery system and unwinding and unbinding that, and all of the things that are connected. Each one could have a connection if they chose. If you go right, it's on the right hand side. You can go and look up the addresses. Still, if you want to, that's the only way you can connect with them, is to through mail. But you could do that, and sometimes they can connect back out through mail, and sometimes they can't. Mostly that's predicated upon what arbitrary thing someone wants to put in the mailroom, like dumping stuff out, or no, you can't do it, or you're on lockdown, or you'll get COVID if you touch a stamp, or any of those kinds of things. but it doesn't, and again, because it's always important to look at things from my perspective in a multidimensional way as much as you possibly can, because that's the truth of who you are. You can actually go through the process of writing a piece of mail and have that connection there, and that energetic envelope there. You can then send it. It could get received by them, and they read it, and they could write you back, right? So all of those linear steps could take, or you could do it where you write that out and for some reason you don't send it, or you send it, it doesn't. The point is that you've opened that energetic envelope. You've made that choice consciously to have that connection with them or any other being. And that's kind of what this whole conversation is about. It's coming into that place and trusting where, for you, the truth for you, where you are with your experiencing of that.
And none of it can be wrong, because exactly what you said, the truth for you.
Yes, because where you are in any moment is a frequency, and it's a consciousness aperture. It could be very narrow, it could be quite big, it could be a combination of things. And you have filters because you're in the linear mind, right? Even though you may be having more widened aperture for multidimensional consciousness of that. So are there any filters? Are there any perceived ways that you hold things that maybe you, to this moment, you haven't looked at? And maybe asking this question or doing this with Heather or Randy or any other beings, doesn't have to be just male, anything, that lets you meet those perceptions, because now they're ready to be seen and shifted. It's just another kind of part of the answer that comes to that.
Yeah. Well, I love, for me, I love this moment of now, because I really am seeing a lot for myself about myself in all kinds of ways, and having some of the really interesting experiences, along the way has been, well, mind boggling sometimes, I gotta say. Well, so I hope that answered the question, and I will, I will make it even easier. I will go and put a link to that which you were speaking on there, BZ, as to how to contact them,
Mhm.
so that those that are interested in opening that dialogue can do so. We put our information in every video that is done. There's a way to get in touch with me at the very least, and but always when BZ's in the picture, I have her information and Lisa's information for you to reach out to any one of us as well, to open up that energetic envelope,
Mhm.
if that's something you feel to do. Yeah, Joshua Benjamin is sharing a lot of interesting stuff about himself in the comments, all his numerology and stuff. So this is very interesting. He also adds he thinks that ET owes him child support. So that's interesting. Uh, Kevin told him he thinks the cabal owes him more than he can imagine. So I love that you guys can play around with each other that way. That's awesome. I want to thank you both and ask if there was anything else that you wanted to share that you hadn't already, because I wanted to save this about I want to also share too. I wrote down a couple of things that I'm going to put in the show more section of this video, and it will probably be tomorrow before you can see it, but maybe not. I'm going to put a link to the Neil Donald Walsh video of a reading of The Little Soul and the Sun, which I feel that BZ sort of touched on there when you're sort of sitting on the cloud, laying out what you'd like to experience in embodiment.
I'd love to look at it. I've never seen it, so that'd be cool.
Okay, yeah. I have to give the credit to our friend Gina Cummings for pointing that to me, pointing that out to me. It made it really, again, it was one of those points I can really point to, like with Lisa's sharing of the fear as an invitation. It was another one of those points that helped me. Well, it really changed my perception, my focus in regards to my grandchild. Seeing her as a creator, not a child, because in truth, that is what these beings are. They're creators. And we said about this heinous bit of programming the moment these new creators land in their little suits.
Oh, it did land in the tummies.
Well, and so I think the moving forward at some point, it's not going to be right away. I get that. I get that. But I only had a taste of what Penny Kelly talked about that the Pleiadians do and how they raise children. And I feel that I'm either on some level of Pleiadian, or I really agree with what she's talking about. When a being lands in this new physicality, they need to be taught how that physicality works. And that is all. Allow the discovery and the play and all of these other things to develop for themselves, because that's the whole idea of it. Is eventually, I don't see that happening. We got too much programming to get over first, but you know, so at
Well, it
any
could
rate,
happen in the simulcast tracks.
right. Well, it'd be nice, won't it? So I was going to link the Little Soul in the Sun, because like I said, that was a very helpful thing for me, and you really pulled that one in there. BZ, I'm going to also link the Bruce Lipton lecture that I was speaking on, and I'm also going to link David Wilcock's Source Field Investigations. And I have to say, there's a lot has been said about David Wilcock, but Source Field Investigations was very well written, very well researched, And if you buy the digital version, it contains links to all the science that he speaks on in that book. And so it was it, I have to say that regardless of the thoughts and feelings about how his narrative, because again, that's where a narrative sort of developed, is immaterial to me. There are truth nuggets contained in almost everything. And so that was a very important piece of work for me personally as well, was that book in particular. So I was going to link that too. Was there anything else that either one of you feel could be useful to link in this particular one?
Link to yourself. No, I'm
I
serious.
can't put that in there. Everybody has to find that one on their own.
Well, it's right there with you. So today's a good day to link up.
Yeah, I like that. Today's a good day to link up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for this. Really, it's been a treat to have you during the day, BC. Because you're on the West Coast, usually it's, late at night, and I'm kind of dragging ass by the time we're ready to dinner. Well, and there's no guarantees at this time of day. All right. Well, Joshua Benjamin, I got to say, I really hope that you will reach out to me, and it's consciousconversationscentral@gmail.com. I would love to arrange a time to have a chat with you if you are so willing, because I find a lot of your conversation in the chat to be very intriguing. So, all right. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I love that you came and did this with me today. Mwah.
Appreciate you.
Next time, choose joy.
Much love.